Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our February meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Gary Lader, Chair of the HCC, and I would like to introduce the commission. To my left, we have our Historic Officer, Jeffrey Long, who's also a registered architect. To my right, we have Seth Cornish, resident of the Mount Airy District. Sorry, Ken Lausch to my right, thanks. I'll catch up. To my far left is Craig Evans, resident of the district. Roger Hudak, resident of the district. To my right is Mike Simonson, chief building inspector. And Desiree Strasser, who could not be with us tonight. Ordinance information. It is the purpose and intent of the city of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings in areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project address and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. No? Okay. There should be a sign-in list, and as applicants come up to the front table, please sign in. There is a 45-minute time limit on new proposals for large projects. I know we have one at the end of our agenda tonight. Upon the second visit to the commission for large-scale projects, the following will be required: an architectural plan with lot lines, setbacks, defined architectural features, all measurements, including the amount of floors, foundations, walls, parapet, window sizes, and the like, a complete set of elevations of the building with streetscapes, drawings showing the new structure and context with surrounding buildings is required. So at this time, I will go to our first agenda item, which is the election of officers that we do at our first meeting of the year. And we need a nomination for chair. If somebody would like to take over my position, that's fine. But we do need a formal nomination. So if someone could
nominate Gary to continue as chair.
Okay, we have a second on that. All right. I'll put, if it's okay, I'll put both votes. We also need a vice chair, if it's okay to put both votes afterwards. So do we have, I'd like a motion to make Craig Evans still our vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, so let's put both of these nominations to vote. Craig Evans.
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote aye, although with some hesitation. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
And Ken Lausch.
Aye.
Okay, so once again, we have our officers for 2023, and thank you. Thank me. And with that, I would like to call up the representatives for 132 West 4th Street. Please take the front desk and announce yourselves.
Robert Powell, Uppercut Barbershop, 132 West 4th Street, Bethlehem, PA.
I'm TJ Berger. I represent Fast Signs of Easton. We're doing the work for Robert.
Okay, Robert, TJ, thank you for joining us tonight. Now Jeff will tell us about the building.
Sure. While I'm speaking, if you could please sign in on the official just to
Oh,
get that
thank you.
started, please. Thank you.
Mhm.
The building description, period style, and defining features. This structure is a very narrow, single-story, attached brick masonry commercial building with a flat roof and a simple parapet capped with metal flashing. The facade includes a full glazed storefront entrance door set in an aluminum frame with an adjacent storefront window with aluminum trim that is currently painted bright blue. The building dates from circa 1940 and has no discernible architectural style. Proposed alterations, the applicant proposes to add window graphics. The guideline citations I use for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standard number 9 that concerns new additions, exterior alterations, or new construction. It included the Bethlehem Ordinance that Mr. Lader cited at the beginning of tonight's meeting concerning the purpose of the district, as well as the Historic Conservation Commission guidelines for signage. My evaluation, the effect on the district, and any recommendations. The Certificate of Appropriateness application indicates the intent to install vinyl signage in the storefront window to reflect the logo of the new commercial tenant. The proposed signage measures 22 inches high by 40 inches wide. Proposed installation is centered vertically and horizontally within the window. Signage graphics include a barber's pole at the center, grounded by 3 horizontal stripes. At the left and right of the pole are straight razors that are splayed open to create an upper curved border, and they have infill of 3 concentric semicircles and a series of vertical stripes. Beneath the barber's pole is the graphic is the text uppercut, all in large, bold, all uppercase stylized lettering with a thin outline, followed by the text barbershop in medium, bold, cursive lettering with thin outline, followed by the text Bethlehem, PA. That's all in small uppercase, all uppercase stylized lettering. Aside from the alternating red, white, and blue barber stripes on the pole, all graphics are bright white in color. The proposed vinyl signage for the storefront window is appropriate as submitted with the following clarifications and suggestions. The HCC discourages the use of bright colors within the Historic Conservation District, so I would suggest the applicant consider revising the bright white to a warm white or ivory. The outline lettering, according to the guidelines, is inappropriate. So as an alternative, appropriate alternative, I would suggest solid lettering without any outline. There's no dimensions on the window. So we have dimensions of the sign. Customarily, the applicant includes basic dimensions of where signage is going. It would be helpful to have the height and the width of the window just to confirm that the sign actually does fit and there's still room around it. According to the sign-in sheet, it asks for a basic drawing of the window. And then also we need confirmation that the logo would be on the inside surface of the storefront window.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any comments on your sign?
No, not at all.
Okay,
I mean, whatever. I just wanted to get it up there to get, that's part of my promotion to, basically say I'm open. The sign I have up there right now is just a barbershop logo, just to say barbershop, but it's nothing really displaying who I am and representing, they see the barbershop.
did you want to include anywhere, maybe on the door, like hours of operation or phone number or anything like that?
Oh, yes, sure, on the door.
Okay, because normally we want to see that as well as part of this.
Even though if I was going to put it on a chalkboard inside the window, that would still have to be.
If it's
Um,
not on the door, we wouldn't have to review it.
Right, okay. TJ, do you know what the window size is?
So the window areas I have is at 16.2 square feet.
Mhm.
The specific height and width dimensions for you. I can provide that for you if you need it, though. 16 square feet. I usually look at what's the allowed percentage of
Mhm.
area for the graphics, which is what we
Mhm.
presented there. A question I did have too on the comment about applying the graphics on the inside. Traditionally, we do window graphics on the exterior
Mhm.
of the windows. It's better for visibility on the exterior. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's a make it or break it kind of comment, but is it not allowed on the exterior, or is it just preferred to be on the interior?
It's typically what we ask for. If it's in our design guidelines, and I'm not sure. I know one concern is if it's on the interior, it'll hold up better, won't typically
Correct.
be susceptible to dirt or weather and so on. So, yeah, I'm going to say that's, one of our regular requirements that we usually ask
But
everyone
either way,
for.
it's just,
And then as far as the window size, I think we just want some kind of confirmation that, the graphics fit in there the way they're shown. Is the warm ivory doable?
yeah, there's several different vinyl materials we could use
Okay.
for that. So, yep.
All right. Again, just all things we normally ask for. Any other comments or questions from commission members?
What's the red in the window? Is that just a curtain?
Yes.
Is that coming down then once this? Okay.
Okay, Gary, Jeff made a comment about the lines around the letters.
Mhm.
I mean, if that's his logo, I don't have any problem with that.
Mhm.
He wants to maintain that.
Mhm.
I don't know how you guys feel.
Well, it sounds like we're ready for a motion.
Yep.
I move that we recommend a certificate of appropriateness for 132 West 4th Street for the signage as presented, with a confirmation of the window dimension, the glass window dimensions, to be submitted to the permit office.
Okay.
City Hall. And that the vinyl lettering will be applied to the interior of the glass and will be an off-white color.
Okay. And any seconds on that? Motion? Very good. Let's put it to a vote. Craig Evans,
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I as well vote aye. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
Ken Lausch.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is unanimous. And thank you again. Best wishes on your business.
Thank you very much.
Did you guys sign that sheet just to make sure? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, our next applicant is 113 East 3rd Street.
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
My name is Ray Rabia. I own Project Printed. I'm the contractor for this job.
Oh, okay. And you said it's Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for coming tonight, Ray.
No problem.
So the building description, period, style, and defining features. This structure is a 3-story, 6-bay, brick masonry, mixed-use attached building with a low sloping roof and a parapet accented with posts. The first floor has a commercial storefront with an entry set back at the center behind 3 large square posts with stucco finish. The storefront has large, dark aluminum frame glazing. Above the storefront is a lower cornice with 3 fascia panels and dental molding. The building dates from the late 20th century and was constructed to replace a similar building that was lost to a fire. It is a contemporary interpretation of an early 20th century classical revival building. However, due to the date of its construction, it is considered non-contributing to the Historic Conservation District because it was constructed after the district's period of significance, which, as a reminder, is 1895 to 1950. That is when South Bethlehem experienced dramatic development. Proposed alterations: the applicant proposes to add black adhesive lettering signage. The guideline citations I use from my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. That is concerning new construction or alterations. That's what I cited with the previous sign. The Bethlehem Ordinance that Mr. Later read at the beginning of tonight's meeting, as well as the Conservation Commission guidelines for signage. My evaluation, the effects on the district and recommendations. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to install black adhesive lettering to the existing sign band within the lower cornice above the storefront to reflect a new logo of a commercial tenant. The proposed signage measures 20 inches tall by 174 inches wide. The proposed installation is centered vertically and horizontally within the central fascia panel of the existing sign band. The signage graphics are limited to 3 words: fade in large, all uppercase, bold, serif lettering, followed by on, the word on, in smaller, all uppercase, bold, serif lettering with tapering stripes above and below. And that is followed by third, the letter 3, and the figure, 3, followed by RD, with the figure 3 in large, bold, serif lettering, and RD in smaller, all uppercase, bold, serif lettering with a tapering stripe beneath. The relevant design guidelines for signage describe appropriate signs within the Historical Conservation District as rigid panels attached to building walls or panels suspended from brackets, as well as individual letters, so 3-dimensional lettering that's pin mounted to a building facade. The proposed black vinyl lettering applied directly onto the surface of the sign band does not satisfy those guidelines and therefore is not appropriate. The applicant could consider or should consider adhering the letterings. I don't have anything against the lettering itself, but adhering that lettering to some kind of a backer, a rigid backer, and that backer would then be installed at the appropriate place in the sign band. The color of the backer could be a warm white or ivory, considering the lettering is proposed as black, just so it contrasts. The same design guides encourage an offset pinstripe detail around, in a complementary color around the entire perimeter of the rigid backing. So right now we just have lettering floating in that panel. So the guidelines suggest not only a rigid backer, but also the backer has some kind of a pinstripe to kind of frame it, give it some kind of a detail around it to offset it from the sign band. In doing that, however, because currently there's no dimensions like the previous one on the existing sign band, they just have the dimensions of the lettering. In order to fit the backer and the pinstripe and the lettering, in my opinion, the lettering would need to be reduced somewhat just to make sure it all fits, because it all has to fit also within that panel and shouldn't conflict with the dental molding above or the trim detail below. And without having the dimensions of that panel, it's hard for me to tell what the lettering should be.
Excuse me, I do have that if you need it.
Sure, I've just got one more sentence, and then no worries, and then I'll turn the floor over to you. Oh, and that was it. I'm sorry. If the applicant was able to provide those dimensions, it would just help us all put the appropriate information into the motion. So thank you.
Okay, Ray, would you like to comment on the recommendations?
Yeah, so we had 2 proposals to our customer. One was for black vinyl, or one was for, as you suggested, black pinned letters. The space in between is only 24 inches. So we had 20-inch letters with the 2-inch border around. I know from speaking to the client, they did not want a board on the wall. They wanted individual letters. They wanted either acrylic pinned letters or black adhesive letters.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's doable or not, or if we have to go back to the drawing board, but that's their request. and they couldn't be here today because they have COVID, so they asked me to be here. So
Great, that's fine. And Jeffrey, just for clarification, if they go with pin-mounted lettering, is it typical that we would still ask for a backer board as well?
No,
Okay.
it's either or. You either
Okay.
pin mount three-dimensional lettering or you put flat lettering on a rigid backer.
Okay, and then I guess the pinstripe detail then would not be a part of this, obviously, if they went with pin-mounted lettering.
That's correct.
Okay.
Given that there's already a contrast.
Mhm.
The structural, structural background to the sign man, at least as long as that's representative in the photograph, I think it kind of constitutes a border.
What would the size of the lettering be if they were if they were pin
they
letters?
still be the same size.
Same size?
We could still do the same size. Yeah,
Same. It would be the same logo.
everything would be exactly the same. It would just go from a black adhesive vinyl to a black cut acrylic,
Mhm.
which we've also done with adhesive before. There's 3M has a product that we can use outdoor, or we can stud mount them, is how we usually like he requested with the pin mounting.
Pin mounted would be better because when you start talking about adhesives, if there's a change at some point, it becomes
A mess.
awkward to retain the integrity on
Correct.
the.
Yeah,
substrate.
I think I'm not sure if pin mounted becomes an engineering thing or not. If it needs to be, if you need more paperwork or anything else from that, it's up to you.
We would need to see how the pins are fastened to the building and conversely how the letters are fastened to the pins. That's just standard.
Yeah, that's fine. I could supply that, but it doesn't have to be a stamped engineer.
I'd have
plans.
to take a look at
Yeah.
as part of your permit review process. I'd
Yeah.
have to take a look at it and just see if there's anything else I needed.
Yeah, we typically use like a threaded bolt that goes into the back of the letter, because we use when we do the acrylic letters, we use something a little bit heavier. I think this one's it's quoted as like a 5/8 inch acrylic, so it'll have the thread directly in the back, and a pattern that goes on the wall. We drill out the pattern and we use a silicone on the pin, and it goes into the wall. That's typically how we do it. But I could show you an example of one that we have in our office if you need be.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, anyone ready to make a motion? All right, I'll make a motion for the property at 113 East 3rd Street. We approve the signage as presented as pin-mounted acrylic lettering to be accompanied by an updated submission for permit. The black lettering is okay as long as it's acrylic and pin mounted. Any
Second.
seconds on that? Okay. And any additional comments?
We're okay with the 20-inch letters.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. If it was on a backer, I think, like Jeff said, it would have to be a little smaller. So the 20-inch lettering should be okay. All right, let's put it to a vote. We have a second.
Okay.
Craig Evans, Roger Hudak. I vote aye.
Aye.
Mike and
Aye.
Ken. All right, thank you. So motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we go to our fourth agenda item for 3rd and Adams Street. If the applicants can step forward.
Hello, I'm Eric DeLong. I am with USA Architects, project manager and registered architect in Pennsylvania.
Dylan Catino, USA Architects, senior project designer.
And we're representing Malelli Realty, who are behind us. They are the
Okay.
developer.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
And I see you're signing, so if you could just capture all 4 names, please, just so
Sure.
I have those for minutes. Thank you so much.
We do have an updated, some updated slides in the submission. We can't put those up.
We got what we have. So my assessment is based on what you gave us.
Okay,
So
that's
you
fine.
can gladly talk about them, but it has no reflection
Sure.
on
Okay.
discussion. When you turn over the floor, you can describe this to us, but
Okay.
I'm not able to assess anything I haven't seen before, so sorry.
Okay.
The building description, period, style, and defining features. This structure is a 1-story detached brick masonry commercial building with a flat roof and a step parapet with cast stone accents. The front facade includes a series of full glazed entrances, along with aluminum glass storefronts for up to 6 commercial tenants. A national drugstore chain. I'll just let you guys get settled first because it's
Okay.
really hard to.
Sorry about that.
You can't help. It's okay. Just go ahead and open them, please. Thank you. A national drugstore chain anchors approximately half of the overall square footage. The strip mall was constructed during the mid-20th century. It has no discernible architectural style and sets back significantly from the street, allow for on-strike park.
Move your microphone back.
Move your microphone.
Thank you. It sets back significantly from the street to allow for on-site customer parking. A candy stripe awning that extends across the entire front facade was assessed by HCC in early 2008. Due to the date of its construction, this building is non-contributing to the Historic Conservation District because it was constructed after the district's period of significance, which was 1895 to 1950, when South Bethlehem experienced dramatic development. The proposed alterations, the applicant proposes to construct a new 6-story building with plans to demolish the existing 1-story strip mall and the parking lots. The new building will be a mixed-use development with 11,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor and a total of 125 studio, 1- and 2-bedroom apartment units on the upper floors. Guideline citations I use for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. That's what I referenced on the previous 2 items concerning new construction. And I can read that since this goes into a bit more detail. Hold just a minute. Quote, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. I also utilized the ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. I also referenced the Historic Conservation District guidelines concerning new construction. So we always start with the Secretary of Interior standards, and then we take a look at our own guidelines. The city has those published online. They're based on a specific ordinance, and they also have guidelines for various reasons, and specifically in this case for new construction. It's a whole series of chapters, but I'm just going to summarize. They include such issues as size, scale, proportion, rhythm and patterns, window and door openings, materials and textures, architectural details, shape and massing, as well as streetscapes. So there's usually at least a page, if not more, dedicated to each one of those kind of categories within the guidelines for new construction within the city's ordinance that created the district. Because they have storefronts, I also referenced the specific guidelines for storefronts. So in addition to the design guidelines, there are 2 other guidelines. One is for signage. You heard me cite those, the previous 2 projects, and one specifically for appropriate storefronts. So my evaluation, the effect on the district, and recommendations. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to demolish the existing single-story structure and associated parking lot to replace them with a new commercial and residential building. The accompanying drawing sheets depict the proposed replacement as a 6-story mixed-use building with a flat roof that measures 226 feet wide, 140 feet deep, and approximately 67.5 feet tall. A below-grade basement or cellar level, as well as a mechanical upper penthouse, none of those are depicted in the current set of drawings. The proposed entry level includes approximately 11,000 square feet of commercial or retail space located at the front or the north facade, which is along East 3rd Street. The remaining square footage would be dedicated to a parking garage, currently depicted with 34 parking spaces. The garage would be accessed from Adams Street, and various support spaces for residential tenants are also on the first floor. The proposed upper floor levels are organized around an inner courtyard and include a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom apartments for an overall total of 125 units. There's the potential for affordable housing units is not indicated within the provided drawing set. As previously stated, the existing strip mall is non-contributing to the Historic Conservation District due to its construction after the district's period of significance. Therefore, the request for HCC approval to demolish is predicated on the applicant's ability to replace the lost building with a new structure that satisfies the relevant Secretary of Interior standards, as well as the relevant design guidelines concerning size, scale, massing, and proportions. The current design proposal not only fills the void left by the demolished structure, but also improves the overall site by aligning the new construction with the prevalent building line of the adjacent city blocks, which is all appropriate. So currently, one of the reasons the existing building is inappropriate is because it's set so far back off the street. They are proposing to build to the sight lines of the buildings on either block next to it, so that is considered appropriate according to the guidelines. However, the relevant design guidelines continue by noting, quote, new construction should reflect the dominant cornice and roof heights of the adjacent buildings and the proportions in building elements to one another and the streetscape. And they continue, if large-scale construction is considered, and in this case, pretty much a whole block, and South Bethlehem definitely falls in the category of large construction. If large-scale construction is considered, particular attention must be given to the effect of the proposed building on the streetscape, so the immediate streetscape, the buildings across the street, and the buildings on either side. But it continues, because of the size, to the district as a whole. So the context is not, if we were dealing with one building and a whole row of buildings, the context would be that row of buildings on the block. This is a whole block, so the context is really the surrounding blocks and theoretically the entire district. The current design proposal digresses significantly from the dominant cornice heights of the nearby contributing structures, which are all 2, 3, and 3.5 stories tall, and rising a full 6 stories. It must be noted that the existing streetscape on the opposite or north side of East 3rd Street represents one of the few fully intact contributing city blocks within the Historic Conservation District. Contrary to the provided computer-generated streetscapes, specifically drawing sheets numbers 10 and 11, where the existing historic structures across the street from the proposed project are depicted as bathed in sunlight, the proposed 6-story design would cast significant shadows across those facades throughout the day. The applicant should provide revised facade drawings or elevation drawings at an architectural scale. They're currently provided at an engineering scale. I do agree the application requires, I think, quarter or half scale drawings. This project is just too big to have at that scale, but still we deal with architectural scales. So aside from the site plan, just so we all can relate to them, the next iteration should really be presented in some kind of an architectural scale. Not only should they show the existing buildings, but as Mr. Later cited at the beginning of tonight's meeting, and also understood through the quotation I took from the guidelines, we really need to see the structures in the adjacent blocks. So when we see a facade along East Third Street, we really need to then see the buildings to the left and the right as well. They will help inform what is appropriate in reference to height. Similarly, Cross Street, when they show us the elevations or the facades on the sides, we need to then see, admittedly, in one direction you have the Greenway, in the other direction we do have blocks of buildings, so it will be important to see those buildings within the context, yet again, to understand how this building fits in the context of the block. Based upon the relevant Secretary of Interior standards and the design guidelines, the current proposal for a 6-story structure is inappropriate for the immediate streetscape and more generally for the overall historic conservation district. And that's best illustrated by the applicant's own massing diagrams of the quote, proposed building that will be in the lower left on drawing sheet number 3. These are kind of massing diagrams of the new structure in relation to the surrounding blocks, the massing of the surrounding blocks. Based on the design guidelines, appropriate design solution would be limited to 3.5 stories tall. Again, we have across the street 2, 3, and 3.5 stories, and that's the context of this building. And based on the guidelines, it should not exceed the cornice heights or the building heights of the surrounding contributing structures. The relevant design guidelines continue by referring such important issues as rhythm and patterns, window and door openings, materials and textures, architectural details, as well as streetscapes. The proposed building elements shift in materiality from brick to exterior insulation and finish system or EIFS to help break down the overall uniform facade into smaller segments that relate somewhat to the scale of the nearby contributing historic row house structures. However, one common cornice height across the entire 260 feet width of the proposed development definitely warrants discussion. So the precedent drawings and example drawings they give show not only differences in facades, breaking up the facade of a block, but also not a uniform cornice height, but varying cornice heights. So in this case, they're not even adhering to the precedents they're providing as examples that they're following. The applicant should reference the nearby contributing structures with varying cornice heights and differing roof shapes as inspiration for variations in height of their proposed building segments as well. According to the relevant design guidelines, brick is appropriate as a facade material, so they're proposing brick that's considered appropriate. However, those same guidelines note that, quote, HCC will not recommend approval of any synthetic stucco or EIFS. That's specifically in the design guidelines. And they continue that new construction should use materials and textures in a manner that is sympathetic to historic buildings in the streetscape. Materials should also be of a similar or complementary color, size, texture, scale, craftsmanship, and applicability to the function performed. Traditional materials common in the district include brick, which we heard they are proposing, wood siding, stucco, stone, and terracotta. Those are all recommended. So as an alternative to their inappropriate suggestion of EIFS, the design guidelines offer a variety of materials that would be considered appropriate. Windows historically comprise approximately 1/4 of the exterior wall surface area within the district. The windows of the proposed development project seem appropriate. I didn't go to direct calculation, but just an eyeball, it seems about 1/4 placed within the exterior wall surface, which would be appropriate. And they're also appropriately aligned vertically. Sometimes we have applicants that come in with kind of a mishmash of vertical window placements, and these align vertically, and that is appropriate. The relevant design guidelines continue that windows should be functionally similar, such as double hung windows, and have similar muntin or grid patterns, along with express sills and lintels, though similar to the neighborhood's historic buildings. The proposed aluminum-clad windows are appropriately depicted as 1/1 double-hung windows. However, select groupings include inappropriate spacing between the windows. Sometimes they have pairs of windows or triples, and sometimes the spacing is not wide enough. It looks like there's just window trim on window trim, and then sometimes they're spaced too far apart without an appropriate mullion between. There needs to be kind of a happy medium. You can have a pair of windows in the district, but they need an appropriate mullion, a true division. And then some of them, the ones that are a little bit too far apart, perhaps need to be squeezed tighter together with a true mullion between them. Other windows inappropriately fail to, select windows appropriately include expressed brick lintels and metal sills. So the guidelines do want to see sills and lintels, or however, the depictions here, they terminate flush with the window opening. So traditionally, those sills would extend out further to the left and right of the opening, and the same with the lintels. They should extend further to the left and the right. Other windows fail to include any kind of lintel or sill detail altogether, and that would be considered inappropriate. There is an occasional Juliet balcony, and they include French-style doors. Those doors are rarely found in the district. We do find a few. Some of those actually came after the fact. They came during later periods and not from the original. There is, however, there are examples where the HCC did consider French doors, and so that's why I'm suggesting perhaps we can discuss these rather than outright saying yes or no. The proposed balconies in front of the Juliet windows or balconies include aluminum handrails. The design guidelines state that aluminum is not appropriate. It suggests that painted iron would be an appropriate alternative to aluminum. There are also occasional pairs of double hung windows that also include aluminum handrails. I'm not quite sure the logic in having those since they're windows rather than the balconies. And similarly, it looks as if they would be also aluminum. As I stated, that it should be replaced with appropriate iron alternative. The relevant design guidelines also depict design components of appropriate storefronts, including an apron at the sidewalk level, entrance doors that are flanked by display windows, all with transom above, and an overall sign band above the transom and beneath the cornice across the full width of the building to delineate the commercial entry level from the residential floors above. The proposed storefronts include appropriate design components, but require further development, perhaps at a larger scale. Maybe as we move forward, it would be nice to see a typical storefront in more detailed one to understand the size and scale of those elements and materiality. In my opinion, more attention should be given to the height of the sign band. It looks like currently there's not very much space above the storefront and beneath the cornice. And just for the applicant's benefit, that is the location for signage. And from experience, you're going to need a pretty good dimension of that in order to have space for your signage in the future. The entire south or rear facade and significant portions of both side facades, the east and the west, include large punched openings at the entry level with no discernible lintels and sills, frames, divided sash, etc., presumably to allow for natural ventilation of the parking garage behind. The relevant design guidelines offer no examples of appropriate exterior openings for parking garage structures. Parking garages did not exist during the period of interpretation, so we don't have anything to help us. However, the HCC previously recommended standard details, for example, sills, lintels, and an implied sash division. So you didn't require them to put actual window sash, but you asked previous applicants to do some kind of divisions in those openings to give it the appearance or the implication of some kind of a sash inside those openings. And a couple times you've even asked for visual screening. So not a blank opening, but perhaps some kind of a grill or a mesh or something that would still allow for ventilation, but gives the implication of some kind of a surface inside those openings. Again, I can't say for sure because I don't have the guidelines to tell me. Again, this warrants discussion. The provided facade drawings, specifically drawing sheet number 7, imply that the project site is completely flat in every direction. with all entrances depicted in perfect alignment, while the first floor plan, which is on drawing sheet number 4, also indicates no elevation change in the overall floor plate. However, when you stand on that block and you look up and down, you can tell it's not a dramatic grade change, but there's a discernible grade change both along the major thoroughfare of the street as well as the side street. And we will require then the building to reflect those changes. That means anytime there's an entrance, it needs to meet the street level, rather than choosing the center of the block and making the other half of the block step up or step down. It really is going to need to respond. It's a whole block here we're talking about here needs to respond to the grade changes of the city public right of way. That would also mean the floor plates themselves will have to change rather than one common slab. It will need to reflect those changes as well. If the proposed 6-story structure is determined by ACC as appropriate, the applicant is encouraged to reconsider several important design elements. Based on the current floor plan, specifically drawing sheets 4 and 5, the orientations of both stairwells result in interim landings that would interrupt the windows. So just based on the floor plan, the direction of the stair, and then looking at the facade, it seems as if the interim landing for every one of those floor levels, the window would have a floor plate from that landing that interrupts the window. That would be considered inappropriate. Similar examples, we've asked applicants to reconsider how they do the stairs. Traditionally, stairs would not be on the outside wall anyway. Any of these historic buildings, the stairs are inside the building, usually toward the back. We don't review the inner courtyard, so it wouldn't matter to us what happens to the windows with the inner courtyard. So that's one option. They could move those stairs to the inner courtyard. They could also consider delineating those components of the facade differently. So rather than having the windows in the stairs the same as the apartments, windows shouldn't be the same in a stairwell. They won't be functional like apartment windows would be. They could actually delineate the stair on the exterior facade differently. It could have different types of windows, definitely a different alignment. It could have a different material, something like that, to compensate for those differences. I think everyone's also seen it. These buildings, typically the stairwells are illuminated all the time. So you're going to have situations where these vertical bands of windows in the building will be illuminated both at all day and all night. And so it would be very strange to have certain windows that look like they belong to an apartment based on the facade, in reality belong to a stairwell that are always illuminated. An appropriate facade design would also have exterior divisions that correspond with the interior divisions between the living units. So currently, some of the floor plan drawings depict apartment units when you look at the facade that appear in different assumed portions of the building. So you might have an apartment that on the facade has both a brick facade and an EIFS facade. Normally, when you would look at these row houses, you would assume that an apartment is within one section sharing that facade. So I think with a bit of tweaking between the floor plans and the facades, that could be improved upon as well. The provided first floor plan depicts a setback that measures 10 feet wide along the east end of the project site. In my opinion, that would necessitate some kind of a gate and or fence, something like that, to separate almost this alleyway between it and the adjacent building. And I couldn't find any kind of detailing for that. So I would request that in a future assessment, we start to see something dealing with that security issue. And future reviews with HCC should also address in more detail such things as the windows and doors. Admittedly, tonight, I'm glad they didn't bring samples because that would be overwhelming. But moving forward, it would be nice to start to get an understanding of their proposals for materials, if it's a factory finish color, just for the resolutions to have those types of information, the manufacturer, all those kind of things down the road. At the same time, it would make sense to understand more about the proposed windowsills and lintels, the metal railings we were talking about, any kind of roof copings and cornice profiles, and the sign band that I mentioned before that would also any kind of improvement to that would be important to see. And then down the road, we would assume any kind of visible exterior illumination. We would also want to see some information about that. Again, premature for tonight, just planting the seed that would be kind of the next step. The applicant should be already aware that tinted, colored, and reflective glazing is not appropriate within the district. And the applicant should also reference guidelines for storefronts. I mentioned to you it's an extra set of guidelines before they finalize the components of the proposed storefronts. And also the guidelines for signage might help inform those storefronts because it gives an understanding of typical sizes and expectations and things for signage above the transoms of the storefront windows. But again, that helps down the road set the standard for the tenants in those places so that there can be a system in place so that the tenants utilize the system rather than coming to you each time they have a new sign and we have to worry about size, scale, all those kind of things. So again, the final portion of my summary is really planting the seeds for future assessments. And I've taken up the whole 45 minutes, so I think we're adjourned.
I was going to say, so, all right, see you next time.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Jeff. That was thorough.
Yeah, quite a bit to digest there. You can see how the conversation is going to go, but the floor is yours. And, this is a very exciting project. Please tell us more about it.
Do you want to go over the project in general, like the what the project is, or do you just want to go over kind of the recommendations?
Well, I'll tell you, I think at this point, maybe whatever you feel is important for us additionally to know about the project.
You want to go through the project?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we kind of got the gist of what the overall scope is, demolishing the existing structure, building a 6-story residential mixed-use building. I think a lot of the points that you touched on in terms of, historic appropriateness, we agree on. We're kind of in the early stage of the process right now.
Sure.
So we're fine tuning all these things and adding more detail and stuff like that, looking at materials. So, we've met with Darlene and her team, a few times before this to get, their great input and feedback. So, with kind of few iterations here to get to where we are. So, I think we could try to, run down, the list of comments and, obviously, we could provide our feedback and things we want to, try to achieve.
Before we get too much further, I do have a question that within, I think, the last 5 or 6 years, there was a very extensive project to underpin the mall there. There was pumped concrete and drilling, and marbles would roll across the floor, and the tower at the corner of the Rite Aid building was sort of a leaning tower of Pisa.
The entire Rite Aid, right?
So my question is, have you explored the stability, the soil stability there and so on to undergird a 6-story building? Because just driving by and shopping there for years gave me some pause, thinking that it may sink into the ground, and the old city market may have swallowed it up. So I just wanted to ask the question if you have explored that at all.
Yeah, no, we have not yet. I know you guys are familiar with what happened in the past. And
I can speak to that if
yeah,
somebody. Yeah, no, that was done, and helical piers were installed at the time. And really, it's not about the foundation. It's about how they demolished that building. And if you've been an old school builder, like a lot of these guys used to do, they used to bury a lot of wood, a lot of stumps,
Right.
and a lot of that stuff. So that stuff, once the building is demolished, can be easily dug out, redone, rolled, whatever it needs to be. to bring it there to whatever the engineering specs.
All I wanted to do was raise the question because
Understood.
I was aware of what happened to the building. It's been fairly recent,
Sure.
and the building wasn't that old. I
Yeah,
understand why it probably happened, but, I just wanted to make sure that moving ahead, we were moving on solid ground.
absolutely.
Right.
Great question, and I appreciate the.
Yeah, and as we progress, obviously we'll get a geotech report, we'll do borings and stuff like that, to make sure structural engineers, confident with what they're proposing.
Well,
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the process here, but
No, not at all.
it seems kind of fundamental.
sure,
Question's a
sure.
good question.
Yeah, and that was my assumption as well, that you're going to have all kinds of investigations ahead of you, and you're a great reputable architecture practice, so I know that's all in the works. Let me ask this question. I feel like there's probably one big hurdle in this that we need discussion, and you probably need our feedback on tonight. Is there more you want to say before we get into that discussion?
It's going to be building height? Is that gonna be-
Sure. So I'll leave it up to you if there's more you want to talk about.
I mean, I can address some of the issues with building height that we've
Mhm.
looked at already, some of the recommendations
Okay.
to look at, like we've actually done a sun study on the building and what the effects were on the buildings across the street on the other side of 3rd Street. And it was actually pretty surprising. The only time we really start to put those existing buildings in shadow is winter solstice at that low angle sun. Every other day we took that midday sun, grafted on there, saw where the shadows fell, and they fell on the sidewalk in front of those buildings. So the only time where it really becomes an issue is that low angle winter sun. So that was refreshing to see, because we thought the same thing. We saw the comment about the renderings. We said, oh yeah, those aren't going to be. So what is this sun going to do? And we actually did the studies, and any subsequent submission will include that.
Okay.
We also took a stab at the block elevations along 3rd Street and along Adams Street to look at what the size of the adjacent buildings. Right behind this building, up Adams a little bit, I believe, is the Ice House that Lehigh uses,
Right.
which is I think that building's 60 feet tall. Right next to our building, I know Alloy 5 has a proposed 6-story apartment going in. And then, just up a New Street is the new office building, which is, I don't know, 9, 10 stories, something like that. No, we realize that there's these buildings across the street, which is why we did the sun study. But I think once you see that, it's a little bit of rest assured that those people aren't always going to be in the sun. There's only a certain time of the day of the year where it becomes an issue. So, but other than that, and then there's the playing with the scale, and Jeff mentioned the continuous cornice that we have running at one elevation along the facade of 3rd Street. We talked internally a little bit about that, and we also feel there's some opportunity to change the height of that, which obviously that cornice is going to make it perceive as, if that cornice is at the top of the 5th floor between 5th and 6th, it's going to look like a 5-story brick kind of storefront or building front there. If we drop that down to places at the 4th story, now it's going to look like a 4-story. If we take it all the way up to the top of the 6th, now it looks like a 6-story. So we also feel that there's some things we can do to change that, to change the perception of the height of kind of row properties along this block. So there are ways that we can make, our client has a certain density in mind for this building.
Sure.
And right now, I believe we conceded from 7 stories to 6 stories already.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I don't know, removing stories from the building at this point, now this project loses value for our client. So we'd like to try to stick to the 6 foot and try to make those concessions in the elevation and try to make that work. I think that's all I have on height.
I have more comments.
Go ahead, Grady.
if we were to look at page 6, where the inspirational drawings or inspirational renderings.
Sure.
We have a passion for the one in the lower right-hand corner, obviously, because it's pretty familiar to us. Some of the features that show up in the other depictions, the quasi-mansards, the dormers, the articulation of the facade, way more interesting than the elevation drawings that we see further back in your submission.
Right. And I, in talking with our team, I actually cited this top left precedent image. I said, so if you look at that elevation, on the left-hand side, you have a 4-story building with a little 1-story top. Then the next one to the right of that is a full 5-story building with a little 1-story storefront at the bottom. Then the next one over that is back to a 4-story building with
Right.
so it really starts to break that up, which I think that's achievable in our
Those are
building.
the kinds of things that make this type of project really stand out.
Mhm.
The devil is in the details, if the details are there, maybe nobody sees them, but they create an impression. And that impression is a significant factor, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, what we're charged with is assuring that new construction projects blend in. And it's a delicate balance.
Right. And having that stagger, you can see in that bottom right-hand precedent image, you have that stagger of
Yeah.
here's a 3-story, here's a 2-story, here's a 3-story and a half with a little gable on it, I'm not sure if we could look at working kind of gable ends on there, but, I'm not sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Just that there are more articulations in the.
Sure. That's something that we could definitely look at. Sure.
I was going to say, in terms of your precedent page on page 6, to me, the only precedent we should be looking at is the one in the lower right, what's across the street. I just don't see any of the other ones you're showing as being relevant to our district. They all look like they're from different places. The one on the upper right looks like it's from outer space. No offense,
We didn't design it. Don't worry. No offense taken.
So I'm just going to say, we strongly encourage you to, spend more time studying our design guidelines and looking at just what's across the street. And, this does not mean to say replicate, and you understand that.
Yep.
It doesn't say, it doesn't mean to say, hey, make a building that looks like it's from somewhere between 1890 and 1950. I think, like Jeff said, some of the things you did well on this, seems like the storefronts are coming together. The size of the windows seem, and the location and the facade seem about right. I think we're stuck on cornice height, number of stories, and materials seem to be kind of getting there. But yeah, the ephes doesn't really seem to work, especially that blue color. Normally we don't really get involved in color selection in this side of town, but when it's for a material that is somewhat permanent, we like to review that and give our comments on it. That's my feedback right there. Anyone else?
One other thing is, take a look at the parking garage on New Street for a reference on how your underneath parking can be addressed with the openings. They really did a pretty spectacular job of making that parking garage integrate with the streetscape. And that included, in their case, putting a big screen along the one side so you didn't see ramps and stuff, but that may not apply to you, but the window part of it.
Yeah, this is They're tricky, the parking garage, but it's something that we definitely will look into. But you know, you have these punched openings with the infill windows above them, and then you want to carry those lines down, and then you have big openings into just surface lot, basically, is what you have. So trying to bring that window kind of pattern down onto those with some sort of
Not necess-
applied, I get it, and it's something that we can definitely look at and come up with some opportunities to just bring that whole kind of line pattern down on the
Well,
facade.
even if it's just to create the image of a window, not necessarily replicating the above.
Sure.
'Cause it's no different from the other facades where you have storefronts. They don't mirror the windows above them.
True.
So that's all
It's-
I'm.
Sure, some of that we definitely tend to look at. Oh, and one other item that I wanted to bring up regarding the elevation change. Jeff brought up that there's an elevation change along Third and then back to Adams. Now, I actually was on the 510 Flats team, and there we had an entire story difference between Third Street and the Greenway. So, and we actually buried the whole first floor in the back of it. This one, we only have about 42 inches, maybe up to 4 feet difference between Third Street and the Greenway behind it. So the elevation,
What's the difference?
4 feet,
Okay,
not nearly as tall as I thought it was going to be.
okay.
And on Third Street, it's 18 inches across Third Street, which, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you'll definitely need to step somewhere, just like Jeff said. And it's just something that needs to be developed as we go along with the design.
Understood.
We haven't had much coordination with civil engineers yet and stuff like
Sure.
that to really nail things down, but
Sure.
that's in the future for sure.
Understood.
I do want to ask a question regarding, obviously understanding that EFIS isn't an appropriate material. Would you be opposed to introducing some sort of fiber cement panel or material that we could then, you know, kind of bring in those details with the trim and board and batten and stuff like that?
The exact FIPON.
Yeah,
that
we,
kind of
we
stuff.
have accepted
Yeah.
those kind of materials and on our projects.
The guidelines kind of predate those, but over time, the agency is about the stipulation is no thick wood grain.
Right. Smooth surface.
And
Yeah.
I don't have to go back into, they just want to get into the details, they want to see a certain surface area exposure. I don't have that difference. Not that kind of like very thin exposure.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the EIFS system, that's kind of out the window, or is it advised against? You know, we've had a lot of experience between EIFS systems and stucco systems, three coat Portland cement stucco systems. Back in the 90s, EIFS became like a 4-letter word, literally, and because it was causing leaks in buildings, and at the time, companies like Drive It and things like that didn't have really good drainage systems for their systems. So
Right.
water would get in control joints, get behind the insulation, and just start popping things off and things like that. Now, these companies have drainage systems built into their details. It's a much better system than it was 20 years ago.
Totally aware of that.
Yeah, and stucco we get concerned about because of cracking. You know, again, it's a 3-part Portland cement, so it's going to be a sponge to water. So now you get a freeze thaw cycle in Portland cement stucco, and you start getting those spiderweb cracks in it. EIFS is something we prefer over Portland cement stucco if we are going to go that route. But, you know, like Dylan said, especially for those, you know, where we had the blue, the steel blue,
The bump outs.
the bump outs with the kind of paneling under the windows, it might be hard to see in those renderings, but there we're definitely going to look at using more of a fiber cement, maybe polyurethane trim. But the other surfaces where we call for EIFS, it's something we'd like consideration on if at all possible.
If you are able to give us some cut sheets or some demonstration background material on it,
Sure.
it would be helpful for us to review it.
Sure. Absolutely.
I would say most definitely not at street level. And I think the concern is that it's just easy to punch a hole in it, or you know, it's easy to puncture with the foam behind it. As far as at upper levels, I'm hesitant to tell you that we'd even consider it because it's just part of our design guidelines and we have a precedent.
Okay.
One of the large problems with it is just the static and its ability to attract dirt, and it's hard to keep clean.
The other thing, at grade, they do make an abuse resistant ephes that they put a mesh behind that it can't crack off. But the complaints that we've had at grade is that it's hollow. Basically, you can knock on it. It sounds like,
Right.
you know, you're trying to achieve something that looks like stone, and then you go up to it and you hit it, and it's like
Mhm.
knock, knock, knock. So we get that point, and we'll try to avoid it at grade.
But on a positive note, you know, I think we all welcome this kind of development in place of the strip mall that's there. You know, it's just a matter of getting the details right, I would say. And,
Sure.
you know,
Well, I mean, as far as the style of the building, are we in the right direction? I mean, yes, we are going to look at cornice heights. We're going to look at varying heights like that. But as
it's a
far
good
as
question. Anybody care to comment on that?
yeah, we don't want to be proceeding down this road and you go, I never liked it from the beginning, and then we do all that work and it goes nowhere. So just want to get a.
I don't think that, from my standpoint, I'm not ready to make a vote on the specifics of this project. Because we haven't
Sure.
defined it.
Yeah, we got to come in here with samples and stuff like that.
So if I were to move for tonight, I would move to table it simply because there's more information to come to us, not as an obstacle to thwart the project.
Sure.
That's me personally. I don't know how the rest of the board is, but my feeling is that tabling is more to your advantage than a vote at this point.
Sure.
Mhm. It's a bit monotonous right now, just to be blunt. And you know, I agree entirely with Jeff's comments, and I pay attention to them. I think I do think because there's so much discussion left to do on this that you know, we should table it. But if we did, you know, if I was going to make a motion on this tonight, I would deny it just because of the number of stories, and I'd like to encourage you to consider it as a 3-story building, because that block is predominantly a 3-story buildings. You know, there might be some other things we would consider to help you, but you know, I think it's just important to give you that feedback tonight. So at least you know how to move forward.
Okay.
I see 2 people in the back. Did you want to make any? We do allow public comment.
No, I appreciate it. We just wanted to listen in.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So I don't see anyone else here from
Yeah,
the public.
It's easy
so.
crowd.
Okay, are we ready? Is someone ready to make a motion?
I'm going to move to table this application for further submission.
Any seconds on this?
I'll second it.
Okay, let's put it to a vote. Craig Evans.
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
And Ken Lausch. Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful for you.
It was. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Guys,
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
too.
You, thanks for coming in.
Okay. The floor recognizes Darlene Heller.
I'll flip the table. Thank you. I don't know if Mike gave you any preview, but okay. We just wanted to touch base with you. We did talk with Harb at their last meeting. A little more than a year ago, I think we talked about revisions to the ordinance that would take a look at administrative reviews and also adding a fee schedule for certificates of appropriateness. We felt that your agendas, your schedules, the projects, the time and commitment that you have to put in for some of these meetings really warranted a review of how we're handling some of these projects. So administrative reviews would be handled, basically at the permit counter. Other communities do this for very, very common and very simple submissions. And the example that we keep talking about is shingle replacement or something like that for a roof. And Phil Rader outlined some specifications for us before he retired for what should be required if someone comes in with a proposal to make some roofing changes. What will we be looking for? And it seems to be like the type of project that your commission and also Harb look at somewhat regularly, and the requests are pretty routine. So we have drafted a revision to the ordinance that would allow City Council by resolution to adopt some items that would be permitted by administrative COA. So it wouldn't be determined by our office, and with recommendation from the two boards, it would really be created by City Council. So they would have to decide which are the items that would be appropriate for administrative review.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's one change. And the other change was creating a fee schedule, both for certificates of appropriateness and then also for the follow-up building permit. We're looking to create some opportunities for additional staffing for review of the certificates of appropriateness, and then also for review of projects as they're constructed. I mean, we have quite a few very large projects now that are being constructed, and we really need to make sure that as they're built, they're meeting all of the details of the proposals that you approved. So by adding a fee schedule, that would allow us some funds for additional staffing in Mike's office. So that's another revision. And this doesn't apply on the north side, but on the south side, because of Mount Airy Historic District is very small, I think it's 16 properties. The ordinance, the way that it's written now, says that we should have 2 representatives from Mount Airy, and we have been challenged really to find 2. So we propose that be changed, that we continue to have 1 representative from the Mount Airy district, but that the second representative could really come from Lehigh County, which would be somewhere on the west side. So someone would be sort of in the vicinity of Mount Airy, but not required to be within the district boundaries. It just was really handicapping us to continue to find interested participants. So Desiree and Ken are the 2 representatives now. Ken has let us know he was interested in stepping down when his term expires, which I think is in May of this year. So we're requesting that revision would be in the ordinance as well. So we'd like to move ahead. We're going to forward the proposals to City Council, and presumably there would be a committee meeting with council to generally discuss the proposals and see what kind of reaction we have from them. The ordinance is pretty lengthy, and it's really kind of hard to read with all the crossouts and the underlines and things like that. There are other things in there. I'll admit we're tweaking some of the definitions and things like that. But those are the three things that really change or propose to change policy. So if you want to talk about any of those, I don't know how commissioners feel about that. The last time we talked about that, I thought there was support for administrative reviews because it would help to lighten the load. Tonight wasn't too bad, but
Right.
some of the nights have been pretty lengthy
Yeah.
for your board, I understand.
Yeah, yeah. And, Mike had brought us, you probably know, Mike has shared some of this with us in past meetings, and, it certainly makes sense to me.
And just as an example, like today I had one, and this isn't implemented yet, but it was like it was an asphalt shingle for an asphalt shingle roof in the hard, but it was a little bit different. It wasn't slate line to slate line. So we still making them go to the board. So it would be almost like an in-kind. It would have to be slate line to slate line. If it was slate to asphalt, it would have to come to the board. If it was like, there's those minor things, like this is pretty straightforward stuff. And one of the things that Harb had suggested, and I'm not against at all, is just making the board aware, like at the end of the meeting or at one point in the meeting, just reading off if there was any administrative approvals that month so that they're aware.
Yeah,
They don't have to go to council for vote because that's the whole purpose of the administrative approval, but just making them aware so they can keep a running total. And obviously we'll keep those statistics and numbers, but just so they're aware for that month.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as that stuff is well defined, it shouldn't be an issue and really would be helpful. I think the other aspect that is most helpful to us in terms of ordinance change is the follow-up on enforcement.
And that's what the fee schedule is really proposed to do, to help us have.
How onerous will the fees be for somebody who, for example, comes in to get a shingle change or, get a sign approved?
It's all based on price of your project. So I think it's like up to $10,000 is a $25 fee.
Okay, that kind of thing is fair.
Yeah, the prices really don't. I think at the most, it might be for a demolition or a project over $500,000. The fee's $1,000, but I think that's as high as it goes.
And, we just see a lot of small businesses, come in for signs or railings or whatever, and they're already struggling to get a business off the ground.
Right.
I don't want to make it impossible for them, or I don't want them to want to try and duck us.
Right.
Yeah, there is a balance there, and we certainly do want to respect that. We try, really to support small business in our downtowns. So I think the schedule that Mike put together certainly keeps that in mind.
Okay.
And I could certainly share that with everyone if they'd want to see it before it goes to council, just so you have an awareness in case you're asked.
We can let you know when those meetings are too, if you're interested in attending or participating.
And it is looking like, we need to bring some more people on board here.
Yes. We discussed that a bit
Yes,
again
we did.
tonight, or at least renewing, because some of the terms really need to be renewed.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping for that. I've been asking about for a while, as you know now. I think, Seth Cornish has been attending for that reason, because I think he needs that reassurance. So, be nice to hold on to him.
So we have some work to do in that regard. And in all honesty, it's been challenging to find people
Yeah.
for any of our boards and commissions,
Yep.
planning commission and zoning. But for the two historic review boards, it's very specific about who we need, residents from the districts and an architect and a broker. And it's very specific. So it does take some time,
Understood.
but we are working on it.
Thanks. Anything else?
No, we just wanted to, bring it up and see if there was any further discussion, see if you had any questions or concerns, and we'll keep you in the loop as we move forward. But, I understand it's the end of a long night. So if you don't really have questions or anything, then we'll,
You could
We're
certainly
fine.
email me or Darlene any questions if you think
Yeah.
of them after the fact.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thanks, Darlene.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion for approval of the minutes from
December.
December, right? Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, and second? All approve? Aye. Okay. All right, good. Any other new items?
No, just to check on that.
Yeah, I'm
cigar
going to
factory
check on the
thing.
Cigar Factory loft.
Um,
And if you think of that other one, just shoot me
Yeah,
an email.
I don't know. I think it was assigned someplace.
Fine.
Mhm.
That one struck out to me in particular. I noticed it because it's a good sign, but it's internally illuminated. And
It was just an investigation that you could put in the record. It was investigating. We don't have the address.
Cigar Factory Loft on
Corner of Morton and Webster.
If a building owner removes awnings, and they only remove it, is that something that should necessarily come before us?
No.
No, okay.
It's like
I
an
wouldn't think
accessory
so.
piece. If they were going to replace them, I would assume it would have to come in front of us, but just removing them.
Well, replacing in kind wouldn't matter.
Right.
I mean, if it's umbrella or if some fabric and
Yeah.
you're using the same framework and you just put new fabric on,
Yeah.
there's nothing to it.
I brought this photo of the West Third Street portion across from this development. And, this building here is the same one that had the sign.
Yeah. Right.
And I saw 3 different pictures of this building tonight. All 3 of them looked different. One had awnings, one of them had green paint around the side. And I thought, oh, it's too bad they didn't leave it that way. How did it get so stripped down? Anyway, that's why I thought I'd ask.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Ken, are you going to be here in March?
Planning on it, yeah.
I'm not going to be here for the next meeting, so Craig, you're going to have to, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Take my place, and sorry to miss you, Ken, next time.
Everybody hates EFS, but something you may not realize is the center building.
Which one's the Liberty? Oh, that's the one on the corner of Broad and, yeah,
The coins on that building,
that's all EFS, right?
they're all EFS,
Yeah.
as well as all of the upstairs.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate EFS windowsills.
Huh?
Yeah,
I know everybody hates it, but.
yeah. But, I mean, right, from a distance, it's,
Yeah.
Continuous insulation.